Good afternoon. My name is Alex Cliffe. I am from the Zoological Society of London. It's a pleasure to be here, and I would like to thank Michelle, Sabine, and the aquarium team inviting me here to talk about quite an important species, which is on the brink of extinction. And we've been working in Turkey for nearly 10 years, but it's been in the last few years where the threats are increasing, and this particular species is on the brink of extinction. Before I start, just to let you know that outside of Turkey, there are only 2 zoos and aquariums in the world that hold this species. One is me in London, and the other one, can anyone guess? It's actually here in AQUATIS Aquarium. Okay, so Nikolai works with the fish here, and the work that these guys do here is really, really important. And working together with AQUATIS Aquarium, we can actually try and save this species. So it's really important to try and breed them, get them out to other aquariums and zoos. So between ZSL and AQUATIS Aquarium, we could potentially save this species. So the title of my talk is Saving the Achigol Killifish in Turkey. This photograph is the only tributary where the killifish are found in the wild now, so it's extremely limited. Beautiful place, but this is the only place that's viable at the moment. So the species is called Anatolicthes transgrediens, or the Achigol killifish. And as Casper and Thomas and Gerardo have already highlighted with the IUCN status of some species, this particular one is critically endangered, but we think this will be extinct in the next few years because of the pressures on the lake and the species. It's endemic to this one lake, and they have a very limited range. The lake district in Turkey has many, many beautiful lakes, ranging from 10 kilometers squared up to 300-400 kilometers squared, and each one of those lakes has an endemic species in them. The lake is under incredible pressure. One is invasive species. There is a mosquito fish that is decimating European water bodies around Europe, and this was a species that was introduced from North America to control mosquito populations. But the problem is that the mosquito fish is a live bearer, so they breed like rabbits, whereas the killifish is actually an egg layer, a seasonal egg layer, which means that they are very, very competitive with the endemic killifish. Also, there's an incredible pressure of water abstraction, which means there is a lot of agriculture on the south part of the lake. So a lot of the water is abstracted from the farmers to water their land. We also have an unbelievable amount of mining in Turkey. The whole strata in Turkey is marble and calcium, and basically it's mined for those resources. Also, there's an incredible amount of pollution as well from organophosphates. And this particular species has been the #1 priority to focus on in Europe within the killifish populations. And I am the EEP coordinator for this species, and it's my #1 priority to try and save this species from extinction. So last August in 2022, I had 3 objectives to try and save this species. The first one was to try and get support from the largest university in Turkey, in Ankara, and this is called Hacettepe University. And they have a huge campus lake on the campus in university, and we were looking to translocate to maintain an insurance population in the university, just in case the population in the wild becomes extinct. I also needed to do another survey of the lake to try and get an idea of their status and also their distribution. And we're working closely with the IUCN to try and refine and update their status because it's getting worse. But also, as Thomas was mentioning about insurance populations outside of the habitats, we are working with the government's ornamental fish facilities to try and get the government involved in bringing these fish and breeding them in very large numbers. So if the habitat becomes, if it improves and we can restore it, we have that population to go back into the wild. So there's Ankara there, that's the objective one, where the university is. Southwest Turkey is where the endemic killifish is. Also in that area there are endemic salamanders, which I'll be really interested to talk to Thomas and colleagues later on. And then also Antalya, where the ornamental fish facility was. And the top right-hand photo is me with my colleague Baron. He's the professor at Hacettepe University, and he's driving the killifish work on the Archigol killifish and other species. And this little marsh area is the only place that the killifish is left in the world. So we went to Hacettepe University and we met with the leading hydrologist in Turkey and also the ichthyologist to get a little bit more detail of what is happening to the water table in the entire lake district. Now, the concern is that they are proposing to drill down underneath the lake to try and abstract more water. But there is a hypersaline aquifer or a pocket or a caldera, and it's actually 5 times saltier than seawater. And if they penetrate this aquifer underneath the lake, it will decimate the entire habitat because it is hypersaline. So we are trying to work with the government to try and stop them from doing that. But if we can't, we need to get these insurance populations established before it's too late. And also, while we're at the university, we wanted to look at the campus lake to see the viability of translocating this killifish from the wild to the university campus. So it's a very huge lake. It's absolutely perfect for the killifish. There are some invasive species which we can manage, but the water quality is exactly the same. There's great areas, refugiums for them to hide, lots of marshes and plants. So we are going to look at moving some of these killifish to this lake in May this year. No one else knows that apart from you guys. So this is all hot off the press information. But that's my objective in May, is to try and move these fish for the first time to this campus lake. And then we'll see how they get on. And if they improve, we can be assured that we have that backup population. But the most sobering and the most depressing thing was the second objective, and that was to go and visit the site and conduct another survey. So you can see this is the original size of the lake 30, 40 years ago, and that's around 100 kilometers squared. Now it's around 30 to 35 kilometers squared, and you can see these are not fields, these are actually salt mines. So they use the water to evaporate because it's really high in minerals, and then they use that sodium sulfate for commercial purposes. So you can see the pressures on this lake are absolutely incredible. And these little hearts are the sample sites where the transgredients used to be, but we could not find any. And the only location we found the transgredients is this one here, which is incredibly limited now. So a lot of pressure on this species. And there was, in those hearts on the southeast part of the lake, it was just completely dominated by the invasive mosquito fish. Also, the other issue is water abstraction. And there are a lot of small pumps that the farmers will move around depending on how much water is in the springs. And you can see from that photo here that over the period of 12 months, the water has been taken from this particular spring with literally 10 centimeters of water left. But the most important thing was to talk to the farmers, because we are only there maybe once or twice a year and we do one sample survey and then we go away. The most important thing is to talk to the local farmers, because they've been there for generations and they can give you more information than any survey, because they were saying the entire perimeter of the lake 30, 40 years ago, the killifish were everywhere. So it really gives us some context to the legacy or the plight of the killifish. And that's one of the most important things, is to keep that communication going, because we can understand that this is their livelihood. They know they have to live off the land, but they also understand what they're doing is doing a lot of damage to the springs and the impact of the killifish populations. As I mentioned before, the range is now extremely limited. So the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the that circle there, and that will give you, sorry, there we go. So that circle there is where they are only found on the lake. There is one population up here which is not very good, but this 2 kilometre stretch is about from me to Casper. It's that narrow, and that's the only place they're found in the wild. There's the killifish here, so the males are the stripy ones and the females are the speckled ones. But in this particular tributary, we saw tens of thousands of them. But the reason why is because they are now restricted into a very, very small body of water. So it's giving a false incentive that they are doing well. It's just that they are compromised into one tributary. So we wanted to try and get an idea of the populations, and the good news is that we saw a lot of breeding. And there were some invasive species there, but not in the numbers we thought. So it was quite alleviating that we knew that they were doing okay. And but they were constrained into very shallow bodies of water, maybe 10 or 20 centimetres. And the mouth of the river is that top right-hand photo there, where they were found literally in the tens of thousands. But one of the things we wanted to do while we were out there is to talk to the salt refinery companies, because they are having the biggest impact on the lake. So it's really important to, again, speak to the government, the salt mining managers to get access to the areas to try and do a survey. And the amazing thing is that the killifish is found in very low salinity. So this is about 1.5 teaspoons of salt in 1 litre. But on the north part of the lake, because of the salt refineries, we were finding them in twice the salinity of seawater, which is just incredible. So that killifish has a wide tolerance of salinity levels. But also the gambusia, which is the invasive mosquito fish, can tolerate up to around 30 parts per thousand. So it's an incredible range of salinities within one body of water. And then that is one of the salt flats there. So where the arrow is here, that dark red square, this is that salt flat. And it was like something on another planet. It's like Mars. It's just full of brine shrimp in there, and lots of flamingos feeding on the salt flats. The third objective was to visit the ornamental fish facility in Antalya and work with the government to see if they can take this fish into their facility. They have an extremely large facility in Antalya, but also they have 7 sites around Turkey that they could potentially save other endemic species. The main headquarters is in Ankara, but they have offices and facilities in Istanbul, Izmir, Ankara, and also Antalya. So Antalya is that yellow circle on the bottom part of the map, and that is where I met the directors to negotiate them taking those fish into their facility. And the great news is they said yes. And the facilities are huge. They are 2 hectares in size, and they are also working with the sturgeon, and they've bred 50,000 sturgeon for release into the Caspian and Black Sea, which is fantastic news. So now they are understanding that the commercial breeding for koi and catfish, they're now giving enough space in the facility for breeding endemic fish to rehabilitate into the wild. So that's really, really good news. And I got some messages last week that they are successfully breeding the killifish in the facility. So they could save this species without any other collaboration, but this is good news. We can start working with them more, get more populations increased, so then we have a good insurance population in the country. So finally, the actions for 2023 is to conduct more surveys. So I will be going out in May, and I will be doing another survey which will help update the IUCN status and see what the situation is like at the beginning of the breeding season. I'm also going to try and increase the representation within my EEP role, and that is why I've asked the colleagues here to increase their numbers, because between ZSL and AQUATIS we can increase our populations and start distributing the fish into other zoos and aquariums and save this species from the captive management perspective. I'm also going to visit the facilities again in Antalya to see how well they're doing. And this is the important thing which Thomas was mentioning before about the marriage between in situ and ex situ. The ornamental fish facility did not know how to breed the killifish. So when I went out there, I told the managers and the aquarists how to breed them, how to set the tanks up. But that information only came from zoos and aquariums. And that's where that marriage between, you know, us breeding these fish in the country and what we do in Europe, in the way we develop our skills and our husbandry guidelines for these fish. I'm also going to investigate controlling the invasive species. We can't get rid of them, but we are looking at ways of trying to control the invasive species in some of the high-profile springs where they were found. But another important thing is there are no zoos or aquariums in Turkey that have this endemic killifish in their collections. So I'm working with Istanbul Aquarium to help me facilitate moving the fish into the aquariums so they can also breed them and have insurance populations in Turkey. But also it's about promoting and educating the locals about the importance of the endemic fish and also the habitats that they inhabit, which is really important. And then on top of that, we are looking to look at funding as well. That's the end of my presentation, but I've got a video to show as well, so it's about 4 minutes long, Sabine. But I would like to thank, before I show you the video, I really want to say thank you to Michelle, Sabine, and also the aquarium team here at AQUATIS. I'm absolutely blown away by the standards of the aquarium exhibits, the messages that are being portrayed in the conservation work that you guys are doing. So I really want to say thank you to your team. I think they need a round of applause. Okay, I'm going to show you a video now, and I did this video in August, and it just shows you the habitats firsthand in Turkey. So if you can play that video, that'd be fantastic.